Hey guys, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back to this lesson on the Fusus Al Hikam on فصوص. We're really reaching the end, near the end of the lesson, inshallah. So I'm hoping we can finish it um, maybe next week, or I mean within 2 weeks, the next coming lesson, inshallah. Um, yeah, I'm just trying to work out where do we stop last time exactly. I know we stopped uh, roughly here. Yeah, this is where we roughly stopped. Um, So now, Qawm Nuh, they're already dead, basically, right? Because they've already drowned and burned, and they had the experience of their tajaliyat within the fire and the water, which symbolizes tanzih and tashbih, right? Water symbolizes tanzih, and fire symbolizes tashbih. And so when the two opposites meet, that's when you experience Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because he can be found in the meeting and union of opposites when two opposites come together. So then they found Allah and they had a spiritual experience of Him in ways that we can't even really imagine. And so they found no one except Allah saving them. And then after that, Sayyid Nuh alayhi salam, he makes his second dua against them, his second imprecation against them, right? And so we went through this, and he says, Rabbi. And so when he says Rabbi, he's asking for something called Thubut al Talween, which is stability. I mean, if you translate literally, it translates into stability and variegation. And we said this a couple of times already, but like, why is he praying against them, even though they're dead, right? Like, if you think about it, it's an astonishing action because him, as their murshid, he is still guiding their souls, even in the afterlife, towards their perfection, towards the perfection of their essences. Doesn't matter which abode they end up in, whether it's Nar Jahannam or Jannah, he still guides their essences towards what's perfect for their essence. So then he makes the second prayer against them, which is Thubut al-Talween. Now, when he says Rabbi, right? Rabbi is Thubut al-Talween. So if you ask for a specific divine name, right? Like Ya Shafi, Ya Muhi, Ya Mumit, Ya Mudhil, Ya, and so on, right? If you ask for those names, then it's a fixed name. So you're asking for only one fixed quality and attribute to happen. And then if you ask literally for Allah as Allah, which you can't really do, um, but if you ask for Allah as Allah, you're asking for variegation, what's called talween. You're asking for them to move from one divine name to another, but without any aim or direction, right? And if you ask for a specific name, you're asking them to move to a specific divine name in a specific direction. But when you say Rabbi, Subut al Taween, that means he wants to take them from one divine name to the next because he wants them to go in a certain direction. He says, لا تذر على أرض من الكافرين ديارا. Don't leave any one of the unbelievers, a single one of them, upon the face of the earth. Because the earth symbolizes manifestation, which is the hura, right? And so Sayyidina alayhi salam, he is under the divine name, Ism al which is Allah, but Allah as al-Batin. And his people, Qawm Nuh, are under the divine name al-Dhahir, right? And the entire fuss is a battle between al-Dhahir and al-Batin. The entire fuss. It's a conflict between Ism al-Batin versus Ism al-Dhahir. And we talked about this so much in Sufi Path of Knowledge. What is this called? It's called a tanazura, right? A tanazura al-ilahi. It's the divine conflict between the names, between one name and the other. And because the root the asl of all conflict in the cosmos goes back to the conflict between the divine names. That's why then Sheikh Al-Akbar, to support his claim, he cites the Hadith Qudsi. And what is the Hadith Qudsi? In which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he strikes the chest of Rasul in a vision. And then he asks him, what are the higher angels? So it's called al-Malu al-Ala. Malu al-Ala. What are they arguing about? So in the Hadith Qudsi, what are they arguing about? They are arguing about the katharat, right? Like, what is a kathara for Bani Adam? If he walks to the mosque, if he takes a ghusl in the cold of night, when he has to do it, right? Certain actions act as a kathara. So they're arguing which one is a bigger kathara for as a forgiveness for their sins, right? So because the angels could argue, that is a tanazar, even though angels are beings of pure light and they're pure beings. So it goes back to what? The conflict between the divine names. And in this fuss, the conflict is between the ism al-Dahir and ism al-Batin. The entire fuss. So when Sayyidina Alayhi says, La tadr ala ard min kafin dayara, don't leave a single one on this earth, he's asking ism al-Batin to drag, literally ism al-Dahir, to the center of the earth, which means the people of Qawm Nuh, to drag them to the center of the earth and to hide them within the earth, right? And then we talked about last time about how that's his second mockery. Sakhara. In taskhur, what's the ayah? In taskhur minna, naskhur minkum, something like that. If you mock us, verily we should mock you just as you mock us, just as you make fun of us. Kama taskhurun. So Sayyidina Nuh, he mocks them back, right? So we read this. وَقَالَ نُوحٌ رَبِّي مَا قَالَ إِلَهِي, because if you said إِلَهِي, then it goes randomly from one name to the next, and there's no direction it moves in. فإن الرب له ثبوت والإله يتنوع بالأسماء فهو كل يوم هو في شأن, because he says هو, which means Allah Ta'ala, he is upon each moment in existence some task, because the universe cannot subsist without him for even like the smallest moment. So then Sheikh Al-Akbar, he says فأراد بالرب ثبوت التنوين, right? إذ لا يصح إلا هو. So like in this moment, this is the only correct thing to ask for. لا تذر على الأرض يدعو. So he's praying against يدعو عليهم. He's praying against them. أن يصيروا في بطنها. He's praying against them so that they can be dragged to the center of the earth, so that the hukum of al-batin can be uppermost, and it can have the hukum over the hukum of al-zahir, so that the hukum belongs to al-batin, not al-zahir. And so al-Muhammadi, the corresponding idea, the exact same corresponding idea for the Muhammadan wali is لو دليتم بحبل لهبت على الله. Even if you were to drop a rope down to the lowest earth, because there's 7 earths, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you drop the rope all the way to the bottom, where would it land? On Allah. If you took your Ma'raj and you went to the highest heaven, what would you find? Allah. So it doesn't matter whether you go up or down, you'll always find Allah. Of course, it matters with respect to the result and the names. They're completely different names. But with respect to the essence, it'll always be Allah, whether you go up or down. And, of course, everything in between. Like, you can take one step forward and then you found Allah, if that's what he wishes. So, it's not really clear whether the Sheikh Al-Akbar thinks that Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam was aware of what he was doing. But the idea is that even if he wasn't aware, this is going to be the result. Even if he wasn't necessarily aware. And what he had at this moment was wrath, was ghadab, and ghira, divine jealousy for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so his wrath, the wrath of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, manifests, right? Because now the time for forgiveness is past. They still, whatever he prays for against them, they still end up at Allah. That becomes the result. Especially because all the movements of Sayyidina Nuh are correct. Because he's upon the divine form, right? Because he's the hearing with which Allah hears, he's the sight with which Allah sees, and he's the tongue with which Allah speaks. So everything he's doing is divine. And this becomes the result, even if he isn't 100% aware of it. But he's aware that what he's doing is correct and needed at this moment. And then he supports himself further. Shaykh Al-Akbar says, Lahu, so to him, that means to the Hawiyya, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, belongs to him, right? What belongs to him? Lahu ma fi samawati wa ma fi al-ard. To Allah belongs what is in the heavens and the earth. But there's a second way to read the verse. Because now we're talking about a journey. So Shaykh Al-Akbar reads it in a second way. So they are going to him. Lahu. Because it's also, this is harf al-ghaya, which is the particle of destination. They are going, so whatever is in the heavens and the earth is going to him, which is called what? A circle. Whatever is in the heavens and the earth is going to him. No matter who it is, no matter how close they are to Allah, no matter how far they are to Allah, they're all going to him. And this is what's happening to Qawm Nuh right now. Lahu ma fi samawati wa ma fi al-ard. Whatever is in the heavens and the earth is going to him. So now, what is on the earth? The Qawm Nuh. And they're going to him in the center of the earth, which means the center of non-manifestation, the center of al-batin. And then Shaykh Al-Akbar says, وَإِذَا دُفِنْتَ, when you are buried in her, right? And the earth is a female. She's an actual female. He talks about this in other places. وَإِذَا دُفِنْتَ فِيهَا فَأَنْتَ فِيهَا, and then you are in her. وَهِيَ ظَرْفُكَ, and so when you are buried within her, you become inside her and she is your covering, right? So that's what Sayyidina Nuh was asking for. وَفِيهَا نُعِيدُكُمْ وَمِنْهَا نُخْرِجُكُمْ تَارَةً أُخْرَى, and so it's from her you should be returned to, and from her you should arise yet again. And this is هذا لِاخْتِلَافِ الْوُجُوهِ. This is due to the diversity of all the different aspects of returning. There's one divine name for that. I think it's let me see. Doesn't I don't remember what it is right now, but there's like two divine names. One for going back and one for coming out of it, right? Murid, yes, thank you, Zanira. Murid is one of the names. Yes, I would agree with that. Yes. Murid is one of them, and there's a second name, right? So, وَفِيهَا نُعِيدُكُمْ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had promised us this from Surah Taha, which is amazing, because it applies to all of us, including Qawm Nuh. So the Quran always speaks eternal truths, no matter what time period it's describing. So now they are being returned to the earth, but specifically to the center of the earth, to the center of the inward, al-batin, the divine name, al-batin. Then he's commenting on the ayah. من الكافرين ربي لا تذر على أرض من الكافرين الذين استغشوا ثيابهم, those who cover themselves with their clothes, وجعلوا أصابعهم في يدانهم, right? So who are the kafirin? And he's very precise with his language. Those who covered themselves with their clothes. They shroud themselves with their clothes and plugged their ears with their fingers so that they would not hear the call, say Nuh alayhi salam. Right? Then he says here, طلبا, seeking the covering. طلبا الستر للستر لأنه دعاهم ليغفر لهم والغفر للستر. So he's referring back to the very beginning of the story, the very beginning of the fuss, in which he says that Sayyidina Hassan called them to ask for forgiveness from their Lord, and they understood that as that he is asking them to ask for their Lord's covering. So they took it in a very mocking way. So he says, just as they mocked my message, right, by covering themselves in their ears, then you too, Allah Ta'ala, cover them with the earth. طلبا للستر لأنه دعاهم ليغفر لهم. And that's also partly what they understood from his message, that he was asking them to ask for some kind of covering. So this is the covering they're going to get. Because he called to them to ask for a covering. والغفر, forgiveness, means sitr, forgiveness. And then Sheikh Abdul Ghani Nabulsi, he has like a wonderful comment on this. And then he says that they cover themselves so that their essences remain enjoying existence, wujud, because they're fearful of even one atom being obliterated from the forceful assault of witnessing God's face. So he's commenting on the almost subconscious psychological reason for the rejection of the message, as if it was so powerful that were they to respond, they would be obliterated. Hence, he who puts his fingers in his ears hears the murmuring of the river Kauthar, just as it came in the hadith, and that is the river of existential being. So there's a hadith, it's probably like a not a true hadith, but like if you put your finger in your ears, you can hear the river Kauthar. And if you actually do put your finger in your ears, you hear like these wave like sounds, right? And so he's giving it like a really wonderful mythological interpretation, like as if when you plug in your ears, you can kind of hear these wave like sounds, as if that's the river Kauthar. So in other words, them plugging in their ears was delightful for them. So why wouldn't they do it? Because they found delight in their fingers being in their ears. And they shrouded their faces with their clothes so that they wouldn't witness God's face directly, lest it burn them to and incinerate them. Right? And there's a Sufi word he's using for that. I think it's called hujum, assault, hujum. Hujum is a Sufi word for a state. It's one of the ahwal that the salik, the spiritual traveler, experiences on his journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's like multiple states that the Sufis experience. There's many of them, like, you know how there's like fana, right? Fanafila, annihilation in God. Well, this is one of the other states. It's called hujum. So that was Sheikh Abdul Ghani Nabulsi's commentary. And then he says, رَبِّ لَا تَذَرْ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ دَيَارًا. Don't leave them to wander around the earth. So it's the earth of manifestation, right? In which they are experiencing the divine names that are their gods. So they wander from one name to the next. So don't let them wander from one divine name or God to the next. Bring them down to one essence in the center of the earth that is denuded. No names, no qualities, just oneness. It means أحدا. So don't leave any one of them. أحدا حتى تعم المنفعة. So don't leave a single one of them such that the benefit encompasses them all entirely. كما عمت الدعوة. So this is the Shaykh al-Akbar's interpretation. Just as his call was universal, I mean, it encompassed the whole of Qawm Nuh, and so he's asking for the benefit to cover them all as well. And it's interesting that he calls it manfa, because manfa means benefit. Even blessing, so the blessing covers them all. Even though Sayyidina Nuh, he's angry, but then he's one of the insan camel. So one of the qualities of insan camel is that when they are angry with you or someone else, what is contained in their anger? By the way, Yasmin, you're right. The second name is Al-Ba'ath. Thank you. Mu'id and Al-Ba'ath. Thank you, yes. Rahma, yes. Yes, Nira. So whenever Rasulullah, he made a dua to Allah Ta'ala. He said, "Oh Lord, if I am a human being like like anyone else. I am pleased with people and things, and I can become angry sometimes. If I'm ever angry with someone, make that anger a blessing for him and a hidden blessing and a hidden mercy." So this is why that if you are in San Camel, there's no action you perform except it's a rahmah, even your anger will contain a mercy within it. And so the Sheikh Al-Akbar, he once met a judge in Spain, I think it's from Ceuta, who was like that. And his judgments, even when it was against the litigant or against the individual in the trial, there would be a rahmah for him in it, right? So this is insan camel. If you're insan camel, then your anger contains mercy. And if you're not perfect, then your anger doesn't contain mercy. So then he says something interesting, right? He goes on to the justification for this dua against them. إِنَّكَ إِن تَذَرْهُمْ, because if you leave them, if you abandon, the word is abandon. If you know, just like they said, لَا تَذَرْ آلِهَتَكُمْ, don't abandon your gods. Sayyidina Hasan, he mocked them back and said, don't abandon them to the earth, right? إِنَّكَ إِن تَذَرْهُمْ, if you abandon them, أي meaning, تدعوهم or تدعهم عفوا تدعهم وتتركهم, right? That means if you leave them and you abandon them, يضل عبادك, they will lead your servants astray. And what do we say misguidance is? الضلال and idlal, it is حيرة, which is what? Bewilderment. They will lead your servants to bewilderment. And this is a precise tafsir and a precise understanding. Because Sayyidina Muhammad, what happened? He prayed against them. What was the first dua he made against them? Let me go find it. He said, I think it's here. Yes. وَلَا تَزِدَ الظَّالِمِينَ what? إِلَّا ضَلَالًا. Do not increase the oppressors of themselves except in misguidance, which means except in hayra. Only increase them in hayra, only increase them in misguidance. Because they were the ones who are now, I'm going to use strange language, they were initiated into the mysteries of bewilderment. Do you see that? Because they were initiated, and it's a very painful initiation, obviously, because they are his murids, right? So, if they were initiated into the mysteries of misguidance, they would then misguide your servants by initiating them into the mysteries of bewilderment. They would also bewilder your servants because they themselves are bewildered and are in this station. They're now at this stage of their spiritual journey, after having been burned and drowned. They are in this station of bewilderment, right? And how are you in the station of bewilderment? When you meet two opposing qualities that come together and you find Allah, then you are in bewilderment. Anyone who finds Allah will find حيرة and bewilderment. Anyone who's he's not that he's clear, because all the prophets are clear, and they all have bewilderment. But if someone is just too clear, too easy about the definition of God, and there's no bewilderment whatsoever, there's no appreciation for what's called the mysterium of God, they don't know God. It's that simple. Sheikh Al-Kabani's mother would say, "May Allah guide you and make you the Imam of the Kaaba," instead of cursing him when she was angry. And he became that eventually. An example of anger still being a manifestation of Rahmah. You know, Zanira, the Arabs do this too, you know? Do you know what the Arabs say? Do you know what the Arabs say when they're angry at someone? The Arabs say, Allah yahdik. Like if they're very angry at someone. I experienced this myself once in Ramadan when I was driving some years ago. And it was close to iftar time. Uh, and there's someone driving a truck. And I think like, I can't remember what happened exactly. But we were just both shouting at each other, Allah yahdik, la anta Allah yahdik, Allah yahdik, Allah yahdik anta, which is nice. They're all nice to us. Yeah, but I mean, all du'as are nice in Iraq because you want someone to have what they don't have. So you're not guided in the sense that there's some, there's at least some kind of guidance that's missing. I mean, I wouldn't mind someone telling me Allah yahdik, right? Uh, but yeah, it's not meant to be nice. But that's the point about anger. Anger is not nice. But it's a good prayer to make. And in anger. It's a good thing to ask for. So it's as if in the anger of Sayyidina Islam, and we don't attribute to him what's not fitting to a prophet. In his wrath, he was still asking for what's good for his people. And this is what was good for them. So they're in the station of bewilderment, right? So then he says, إِنَّكَ إِن تَذَرْهُمْ, right? If you abandon them, يُضِلُّ عِبَادِكَ, they will misguide your servants by taking them into the station of bewilderment. أي يحيروهم فيخرجوهم فيخرجوهم من العبودية إلى ما فيهم من أسرار الربوبية. They will take them out of the station of servanthood into the secrets. That's why I call it what did I call it? An initiation into the mysteries, right? Into the secrets, into the mysteries of lordship, al-rububiyya, right? And the Sheikh Akbar has more than one example of this in the Futuhat, where it happens that people enter into the station of lordship, right? And he explains like what are the implications of that. So if you all, I'm trying to remember this from the top of my head now. If you all remember the hadith about the poor Bedouin who did not complete his fast because he he slept with his wife during the day when fasting was going on. Does anyone remember that story? And then he came to Rasulullah asking what he should do, right? Does anyone remember that story? So this is an actual hadith. The poor Bedouin comes to Rasulullah and tells him what he's done. And then Rasulullah says, okay, so the expiation for that is you've got to, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, so forgive me if I miss details. There's a certain amount of money you have to pay. Go pay this money. And then the Bedouin is like, well, I can't afford that, right? So then Rasul says he gives him some dates. He says, okay, here's the amount equivalent in dates. Go and give them to poor people, right? And then what does the Bedouin say? What does he say?
I think he says, I don't know even for the means.
Yeah, correct. He says, "O Rasulullah, is there anyone between these two sides of the valley with black lava? Is there anyone between them that's poorer than me?" So then Rasulullah, he laughed and he said, "Okay, then you can eat them." Right? The Sheikh Al Akbar says, and this is a very detailed passage. I'll see if I can find it, and we won't read it because I think it would be overwhelming. Um, but let's see if I can find it quickly. He says that the Bedouin who broke his fast, he was in the station who of Rububiyah. He was in the station of lordship when he did that. Um, and so when they're having this conversation between him, the Bedouin, and Rasulullah, the Sheikh Al Akbar is saying it's as if there's a second conversation going on where they're talking about wujud, but without really knowing it. So the Bedouin, in turn, was asking Rasulullah, bring me down from the station of lordship into the station of Ubudiyya, right? Yeah, I found the passage, but I think I won't read it. I'll save for a different time, inshallah. So then Sheikh Al-Akbar says, فَيَنْظُرُونَ أَنفُسُهُمْ. So then, if they did that, if these people from Qawm Nuh were to reveal the secrets of lordship to others, then these others, what would happen to them? فَيَنْظُرُونَ أَنفُسُهُمْ. They would gaze into themselves and see themselves as what? أربابا, lords. بعد كانوا عند نفوسهم عبيدا. After they used to be slaves within themselves. فهم العبيد الأرباب. Then they would become slave lords, right? And if he's using oxymorons and he's bringing the oxymorons together, he has to, because this is the station of bewilderment. And this is precisely appropriate for the station of Hira and confusion and bewilderment. وَلَا يَلِدُوا, and then they would not give birth to, right? إِلَّا فَاجِرًا كَفَّارًا, and they would not give birth to anyone except Fajr is someone who I think who's a profligate, someone who exceeds the bounds of the law and goes to excess. And kathara is an intensive form of unbeliever. So this is what he says. So ولا يلد, meaning أي ما ينتجون ولا يظهرون. They would not produce, or neither would they manifest, except as fajiran, meaning مظهرا ما ستر, as those who are not just manifested, right? But they're openly appearing and they're not hidden, they're not covered, right? Kathara, أي ساترا, those who are concealed. And ساترا ما ظهر بعد ظهوره, those who conceal what was previously manifested and revealed after its appearance, right? So just like a flickering light switch that goes on and off, they would be giving birth to those who. So you see, this is another oxymoron. So he's reading Fajr as someone who's Dahir, and Kathara, he's reading as someone who is hiding something, right? Who is Batan, who's Satiran, who's hiding something. So they would constantly what? Reveal secrets, then hide secrets. Reveal secrets, hide secrets. They would reveal their lordship, then hide their lordship. They'd reveal their lordship, then hide their lordship. Like in a very dysfunctional way, almost in a schizophrenic like manner. So كثارا أي ساترا ما ظهر بعد ظهوره فيظهرون ما ستر. So they reveal what was previously covered and hidden. ثم then يسترونه بعد ظهوره. Then they'd hide it again after it was revealed and made manifest. فيحار الناظر. So the one who's looking at them would become confused and bewildered. ولا يعرف قصد الفاجر في فجوره. He would not know what is the intention and the meaning of the fajr في فجوره, in the profligate in his profligacy, or the one who is making manifest his manifestation. ولا الكافر في كفره, nor the unbeliever in his disbelief, or the one who's covering with his cover. وشخص واحد. And these are two states, right? حالان, there are two states that exist in the same person, right? And so this is my interpretation of the passage. Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, after he witnesses what happens to his people after they drown and burn, they enter the station of bewilderment, then the mysteries are unveiled to them because they saw God. If you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by definition, the mysteries are unveiled to you. So the mysteries were the asrar, those which should not be seen by normal people, are unveiled to them. And so then they unveil those mysteries in turn, right? And this is what Sayyidina Nuh sees. He sees an alternate future in which, though, right, إِنَّكَ إِن تَذَرْهُمْ, were you to leave them, if you left them after they entered the station of bewilderment and gained these mysteries, this is what they would do to humanity. And it's kind of like an apocalyptic nightmare future in which there'd be no guidance and no stability. So just as, now what are they doing? They are fluctuating from one state to the next. They're fluctuating between the state of covering to the state of uncovering. They're fluctuating from the state of being a slave, because you're a slave when you're covered, to the state of being a lord when you are uncovered. So because they're fluctuating from one state to another, that's the function of a khalifa. The very definition of khalifa, khalifatul Allah ala ard. What does Shaykh al-Akbar say about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? وَكُلْ يَوْمٍ هُوَ فِي شَأْنٍ. Each day is upon some task. And the tasks are Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creating existence. And creation is diverse. So the activity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is diverse. It's not one thing. He's doing many different things. So if you're a Khalifa to Allah, you represent God. You too, each day you're upon some task. You are receptive to the diversity of needs. And so you have a diversity of actions that are required in order to fulfill your function as Khalifa to Allah ala ard, upon the earth, to meet the needs of creation. So you fluctuate from one state to the next. This is Khalifat Allah. If you are a wali and your state is fixed, it doesn't change, and then you still have a high station, but you're not Khalifat Allah, you're Khalifat of a different name because you're fixed. The very definition of being God's vicegerent, Khalifat Allah, is that you fluctuate, you move from one state to the next. That is why Sayyidina Muhammad, what did he say? When he was narrating the story, he was narrating the story of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. And he got to the part where Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam was in jail. What happened when he was summoned to the king? When he was in jail? What did he tell the summoner? He told the one coming to him in jail, this is in the Quran, Go back to your Rabb, who's the Pharaoh, the king. Go back to your Rabb and inform him about what happened. So he didn't answer the call. So he didn't respond to the state. So when your state is fixed, this is because Yusuf alayhi salam, he was enjoying the sweetness of intimacy with Allah in prison. He did not want to leave that intimate, sweet state. So his state was fixed. What did Rasulullah say about that incident? He said, had I been the one in that position, I would have responded to the call. Why? Why is that? Because all the prophets are perfect. But the most perfect of the perfect, Sayyidina Muhammad, he is in alignment with the ayah وَكُلَّ يَوْمٍ هُوَ فِي شَأْنٍ. Each day he's upon some task. So the state of Rasulullah is never fixed. He only has one fixed. And the one thing that's fixed about him is that he's in the station of maqam la maqam, the station of no station. And so he responds to all situations. And he is exactly Khalifatu Allah. He will respond to each and every situation with what it needs. Okay? So let's come back to this. They're doing something similar, but in a very inside out kind of manner, in the opposite way. So just as you have the Masih, who is Sayyidina Isa, and you have the Masih Dajjal, who is the Antichrist, right? I call these people, call Nuh, the anti-Khalifas. Because you know how the Masih Dajjal, he mimics Allah, or he mimics Sayyidina Isa. He can bring water, food, bring the dead back to life, and it's all a lie, but he can mimic it, right? And that's what Dajjal means. It's the gold. It's the fake gold that mimics real gold, but if you scratch it, you find that it's something else. Um, it's like an alloy. It's not real gold. So these are the anti-Khalifas. So Sayyidina Nuh he sees an alternate future, which is an apocalyptic nightmare, in which these anti-Khalifas are running amok in the world. And they're destroying all guidance. So he says, if you were to leave these ones upon the earth, they would only sow corruption and sow misguidance, because they have witnessed the mysteries of being in the station of Hayra. They would only be fajiran kathara. It's an oxymoron. They would be manifesting and hiding, manifesting and hiding, manifesting the lordship and hiding the lordship, manifesting the lordship and hiding the lordship. ولا يعرف قصد الفاجر في فجوره ولا كافر في كفره والشخص الواحد. Right? Does anyone have any questions thus far? Oh, maqam la maqam. This is a great question. So on the Sufi path, there are different maqamat and maqams that you move from one to the next. The first maqam on the path of tasawwuf is maqam tawbah, which is the maqam, the station of repentance. You repent to Allah from being heedless, from ghafla, and now you focus on Him. That's called maqam al-tawbah. Then you move on to the different stations like maqam al-mujahada, and maqam al-ju' wal-uzla, maqam al-muraqaba, and so on. So you move from one station to the next until you reach the end of the path. But there's more stations that aren't traditionally mentioned in the books of Tasawwuf. So maqam is explicitly mentioned by Shaykh al-Akbar. Maqam, there's an ishara to it in the Quran. It's from Surah Al-Ahzab, Surah 33. And it's when someone is saying, Ya Ahl Yathrib. It's also called Maqam Yathrib. Maqam Yathrib is also Maqam la Maqam. In the Quran it says, Ya Ahl Yathrib, Ya Ahl Yathrib, La Muqama lakum. So this is with a Dhamma, La Muqam, La Muqama lakum. But there's a variant reading, there's a variant qira'ah with a fatha that can be read as la maqama lakum. You can read it both ways. So there's two recitations, with a dhamma and with a fatha. The traditional recitation is with a dhamma. So you have no way to withstand the forces that are coming towards you. La maqama lakum. So go back, return. This is the station that includes all the stations beneath you. The person who reaches maqam, la maqam, there's two things that are said about, three things that are said about him. He's the perfect and sand camel. This is perfection. There's no maqam higher than this maqam. It's the maqam that Sayyidina Khidr alayhi salam is in. There's no station higher than the station. Secondly, it's the station that includes all the stations beneath them. What that means, thirdly, is that you are not limited in perspective to just one station. You're not governed by a station, because when you're in a station, you're ruled by the rules of that station. But in maqam, la maqam, there's nothing ruling you. Because كل يوم هو في شأن. You respond to each situation with what that situation requires, with the maqam it requires. But if you're stuck in a maqam, then you don't respond to other things except with what your maqam requires. So you're not limited in perspective. But if you're stuck in a maqam, you're limited by the perspective of the maqam. So the maqam is the station of no station, the station of not being limited by any station, and you rule all the stations. It's called maqam al-Muhammadi. It's the Muhammadan maqam. Are there any questions so far? I just want to take a break so we can maybe process some of what's going on. MashaAllah. Allah barak fikum. So then I think we can I don't know. We are kind of done. Yeah, we're done. That means we can finish it today if we wanted to, really. Okay, then let's just finish it. So he sees that apocalyptic alternative future and nightmare. So then he asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to not leave them upon the earth so that never happens. Right? So then he drags all the manifestations of the divine name Al-Dahir, and he drags it to the center of the earth, to the divine name Al-Batin. Now, why do I say all that? I say that because it's not written in the Fusus. There's another passage from the Futuhat al-Makkiyya, I think you find it in chapters 10 and 12 of the Futuhat, where he talks about what's called the Dor al-Mulk, right? The story and the revolution of the divine kingdom, the kingdom of who? Of Rasulullah. So then what he says is that before the coming of Rasulullah, you have all the prophets before him. Now, technically, there's only one prophet in the whole of history. كنت نبيا وآدم بين الماء والتين. What does that mean?
I was a prophet before, when Adam was between water and clay, and that one, can't remember, before everybody else. Oh,
That's absolutely right. Thank you so much. I was a prophet when Adam was yet between clay and water. There's only one prophet in history, and that is the haqiqa Muhammadiyya. It's called the Muhammadan reality, right? The transcendent cosmic reality of Rasulullah, whose most perfect manifestation is in the bodily form of Rasulullah. So, what happened? before the coming of Rasulullah, there were prophets before him. But really, all these prophets are what are called his deputies, his nawab. You are a deputy when you are taking the place of someone who is absent. The body of Rasulullah was still absent before he was born. So then there was the prophets of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, Nuh alayhi salam, Ibrahim, Dawood, Sulaiman, Ayub, Isa, Musa, all the way to Rasulullah. So that means when he is absent, the divine name that's ruling that time period, that revolution of time, is the divine name al-Batin, the inward. It has the ruling property, the ruling hukam when Rasulullah is absent. Then Rasulullah he's born. And then he says time has completed its revolution and has now started again. What's the divine name that comes?
Zahir.
It is the divine name al-Zahir. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's the divine name, the manifest. Because now who is manifest? Rasulullah. So now the Zahir has the ruling hukam from the time Rasulullah was born till the end of time. And it is the one that rules, since Rasulullah is now manifest. So and who are Qawm Nuh? They are the Muhammadans. They are the Muhammadans, or at least they're analogous to the Muhammadans. So it is as if the divine name al-Batin was saying the story, it's not your time yet. So I will take you and bury you in the center of the earth, and you will grow like a seed in a plant until your time comes. And when you grow as a seed and your time comes, who will be born? Muhammad ﷺ, and that's when you can come out. That's part of the meaning of this whole story. And you're definitely right, Yasmin. Every prophet reflects a portion in the light and qualities of Rasulullah because they all belong to him. And when he appeared in this world, these perfections were gathered and completed in him. That is completely correct. Allah barak fiki. Yes, guys, this is what we spoke about in the religious pluralism course. Exactly. Yes. We talked about this before. Ameen. Sidi Aqil, Ameen. Yes. And the Muhammadan reality is a marvelous thing, subhanAllah. So that's the story. So then Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, when he sees that it's not time for the divine name Zahir to come out, he prays for it to be buried in the center of the earth, who are the Qawm Nuh, his people, right? Because he sees what would happen if they were to remain upon the earth. So then he says, Rabbi ighfir li, oh my Lord, forgive me. And by now, this whole time, after all these lessons, what does ighfir li mean? غفر يعني ستر. Why is he saying that? Oh my Lord, forgive me. So he's saying, oh my Lord, cover me over. Hannah, this is to do with the fact that ghafara means satara. Forgiveness, linguistically, means to cover over. Like when you ask Allah to forgive your sins, it's to cover you over with His rahmah, right? Or cover you over with His forgiveness, right? So this is an integral point for the whole story of Qawm Nuh. So it'll be in the previous lessons because that's part of what makes the whole story function, basically. But yeah, so then he says here, cover me over, right? And you wonder, like, why is he saying that? Cover me with your love, cover me with your mercy. Yes, but because we're in this part of the story, in this context, there's more to it than that. It could also mean like, cover me with yourself, right? So let's see what he says. Covering as, yes, encompassing, but, well, yeah, encompass me, but with what? That's the question, right? Encompass me, but with what? So he says, استرني وأستر من أجلي. Cover me and cover for my sake. فيجهل مقامي وقدري كما جهل قدرك في قولك وما قدر الله حق قدره. What does that mean? He's saying, make me like you. Oh Allah, make me like you. How is that? No one should know his real worth. And it's a mirror reflection. Yes. No one should know his real worth. So this is what he says. Rabbi, oh my Lord, forgive me. Meaning, cover me and cover for my sake. And make my station unknown. Make me unknown. Make my station and my value, my worth unknown. Just as your worth is unknown, which is recorded in the Quran. They have not valued God with his true worth. They have not given God his true value, which is correct. And if you look at history, this is a marvelous insight. Because if you look at the biblical literature surrounding Noah in the Judeo-Christian traditions, what you will end up finding is that they disagree about who he is. And there's disagreement within Judaism itself about who he is. And they have the reasons for that. So even within the rabbinical tradition, they don't agree on who he is. They don't agree on who he is. So some rabbis think that he's not a good person because he wanted to save himself, not humanity. And we say astaghfirullah to that. And some rabbis think he is not a prophet, but he's salih. He's a righteous man, but not as good as Moses, for example, right? Exactly, Zanira. Exactly. This is the very fulfillment of his dua. It actually happened. This actually happened. This happened for real. And then the Christians think that he's the prime example of a zahid, of an ascetic. But they have no idea that he's a big prophet of God. Or maybe some of them do, but there's no agreement about that. And about his ma'rifah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fulfilled his wish. Cover me. He did cover him so that no one would know about him. And the greatest covering is not that you're unknown in history. Like you know, there's like prophets we don't know about history. That's not the greatest covering. The greatest covering is to be hidden in plain sight. It's when we know your name, we know you existed, but we don't know what you're worth. The greatest kind of being hidden is to be hidden in plain sight. So then, and this is a divine request, make me like you, correct, which is what Rasulullah also prayed for. Allah, make me a light, because you're light, make me like you. And it says, Rabbi ighfir li wa liwalidayya, and my parents, right? And now he starts to go into what we might consider to be a metaphorical interpretation, because somewhere in the beginning of this fuss, I mentioned that there's like 4 ways to read this chapter. There's like a microcosmic perspective, and there's a macrocosmic perspective. There's a metaphorical perspective, and then there's a real perspective. So here, it's like he's going into the metaphorical microcosmic perspective. And you're just wondering why. But I think throughout the majority of the whole chapter, he's not metaphorical. Although a lot of the commentators would want it to be metaphorical, but he's not. Sheikh Al-Akbar is not being metaphorical. Only here, this is the only example I find where he's being explicitly metaphorical. Even then, it's connected to the previous part of the story. I think like it is logically connected to the previous part of the story. So he says, "Waliwaya," and cover and forgive my parents, which means cover my parents. So who are my parents? من كنت نتيجة عنهما. The ones who gave birth to me, I am the result of them. I'm the product of them. And who am I the product of? The عقل and الطبيعة. وهما العقل والطبيعة. They are the first intellect, العقل الأول, who's the cosmic universal intellect from which all spirits arise. That's my father. والطبيعة, and Mother Nature with a capital N. She's my mother. And you can also say that the earth is your mother, the dunya is your mother, who gave you birth into this world, which takes you into the akhirah. Right? So cover them so that people don't know who they are as well. Why is he saying this? Like when people read this and they kind of like skim over the text, it seems like he's fudging things, but he's not. He's just going so deep, it's hard to follow him. He's saying cover the true nature, cover the true meaning of the first intellect, the cosmic intellect, and Mother Nature. Because you find this in Greek myth, all over Greek myth with regard to nature. If the mysteries are revealed to you, you go insane. So if the asrar of Mother Nature are revealed to you, it can kill you, it can destroy you. So Nuh has peered into what happens when his people are initiated into the mysteries of bewilderment after their destruction, the destruction of their body, which then unveils their spirit, and it's the spirit that connects to the asrar. So he's saying, don't let people know the true value and worth of the cosmic intellect or Mother Nature, my parents. And forgive and cover who enters into my house. What's my house? My heart. أي قلبي, who enters my heart, right? Cover my heart as well, which is the asrar and nuhiyya, the secrets of Sayyid Nuh alayhi salam. Whoever enters my heart, cover them. And so who are the ones entering my house? So there's an outward interpretation of the verse, and there's the inward interpretation that we mentioned before. So the outward interpretation is he wants Allah Ta'ala to forgive all the believers who enter into his religion, his bayt, his household, right? So that's the dua from our second father. There's three fathers, right? Adam's the first father, Noah is the second father, and Ibrahim alayhi salam is the third father of humanity. So our father is asking Allah to forgive us, right? But the inward meaning is that whatever enters my heart, cover it to protect my heart. What is entering his heart? ولمن دخل بيتي مؤمنا يعني مصدقا بما يكون فيه من الإخبارات الإلهية وهو ما حدثت به أنفسها. مؤمنا is in grammar it's called a hal. So whatever enters my heart, believing or in the state of belief, which means in the state of confirmation and believing and giving confirmation to. بما يكون فيه with regard to the divine reports. So like whatever Allah says about himself, that's called the akhbar al-ilahiyya. You find a lot of those in Hadith Qudsi that give you reports about the nature of God. وهو ما حدثت به أنفسها. It is what أنفسها أنفس is that in the Jam'a? I need to double check the translation. It's what the very selves are saying, I think, and speaking. Right? So whatever conversation is happening deep within yourself, cover that for me as well, and cover over the divine reports that enter my heart. Because, and he doesn't say why, but it could be that those form as a distraction from him connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Like he sees the power of all the mysteries that have come from his people. He wants to be devoid of it. وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ, and cover them too. من العقول. من العقول. عقول translates to intellects. So cover for the believers their intellects, because the intellect can lead you astray when it's not guided by revelation. وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ. So now these are feminine believers. So the believing men and the believing women. مِنَ النُّفُوسِ. And these are the secrets of the inner self. So all that from within my own inner universe, cover all of it. And then his gaze turns to his people one last time so he can make a final dua against them. Because now they have been moved and transferred from maqam and sifat, which is the station of the attributes, to the station of the essence. The essence is the black. It's called the black light. It's the black station in which there are no qualities whatsoever. There's only just oneness, one. There's nothing to know about God because there is no attribute with which to know him. That's the station he asked for his people to be brought down to, right? So he says, and so now he called them kafirin before because he wants to cover them with the earth. Now he says, don't increase the oppressors, because ظالمين is connected to dhulam, which is what? Oppression, but dhulam also means darkness. Because now they're in darkness. They're covered by the darkness of the divine essence. ولا تزيد الظالمين يعني من الظلمات, from the darknesses, who are what? من الظلمات أهل الغيب, that belong to the people of the ghaib. The people of the ghaib, they're the people of the unseen, the people of the absence, the people of the unseen. That is a category of saints. But now they, قوم نوح, are أهل الغيب because they're in the ghaib. المكتفين المكتنفين, المكتنفين خلف الحجب الظلمانية. They who are covered by the canopy behind the veil of pure darkness. So those who are in this station, don't increase them except إلا تبارا, except in destruction, أي هلاكا. فلا يعرفون نفوسهم, don't increase them except in perishment, which is finna. فلا يعرفون نفوسهم, so they don't know themselves, because لشهودهم وجد الحق دونهم. Do you see? Because they're being annihilated themselves, because they're witnessing the face of God without them. Because there's different levels of shuhud. You can have a level of witnessing in which you're seeing God and yourself. But this is the level of shuhud in which you see God but not yourself. Which means there's no self-consciousness. You don't feel yourself, you don't know yourself. You only know God. That's the station he's praying for them to be in. And then Allah does it, right? وَلَا تَزِدْ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا تَبَارَى. And tabara means destruction, halak. Al-tibr is gold dust. It's gold dust too. It's gold dust. It's like the gold nuggets that you break off the mine when you're mining for gold, which is an answer to the third mockery when Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam mentions that their children and their wealth led them astray. So then in mocking them, he says, don't increase them except in the gold mines of destruction. So that they're broken into pieces the way gold is broken into small pieces by being broken off from the mine shafts. So that they're not conscious of themselves. The sight, the divine sight, the sight of God at this level of shuhud smashes their consciousness to pieces. But it's gold. Because when you witness God, all you get is pure joy. Right. And then he says, for the Muhammadan, because this is the station of the Muhammadan saints. So the Muhammadan saints have that too. كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه. Everything is perishing except for his face, which is the person who's perishing, that person's face, or for God's face. Everything is perishing except God's face. Everything is perishing except that own person's face. The damir can be read both ways, which is not a coincidence. Because when your face breaks down, what do you witness?
The face of God?
Yes, the face of God. Exactly. When your face is destroyed, what you see is God. So it's not a coincidence that the ayah is written that way. And I mentioned this before. They're doing a cosmic ma'raj, but it's going downwards. But they don't complete the salat. It's an incomplete salat. When they're drowning and burning in the water, they're in the first sujood. When they're taken out of their fana in God, they're in julus. When they're brought back to the center of the earth and they're being annihilated in God's essence, that's the final sujood. But it's not the complete salat. So this is their second sujood in the cosmic ma'raj. وَالتَّبَارُ الْهَلَاكِ. And this destruction is perishing, which is the same thing. So then Sheikh Akbar, he finishes this chapter by saying, if you want to know more about this, وَمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يَقِفَ عَلَى أَسْرَارِ نُوحٍ فعالية بالرقية فعليه عفوا فعليه, so he should ascend بالرقية. Whoever wants to know more about the secrets of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, he should ascend into the sphere of Yuh. The sphere of Yuh, well, I'm trying to remember. Actually, this is written in the footnotes, if I'm not mistaken. This is 47, right? وفي بعض النسخ مطبوع في فلك النوح ويوح بالياء وواو والساكن والحاء بمعنى شمس. Yeah, so correct. So that's the sphere of the sun. And then he talks about this more in the Futuhat and the Tanazulat al-Mawsiliyah, right? So he should ascend to the sphere of the sun, which is the level of Idris alayhi salam as well. And that's mentioned in his book, the Tanazulat al-Mawsiliyah. And that's it. We actually finished the chapter. I thought we'd finish it later, but it's done now.